Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity news for middle market companies, their investors, and management teams. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Monday, June 15th, 2026, and despite lots of talk about an agreement, it would seem the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed. This morning, hopefully, we'll be able to deliver a different update on this front in the weeks ahead. Instead, however, we're going to focus on another issue of national security, as it was certainly the biggest news story of the week in terms of both cyber and from an AI perspective. And as regular watchers of this program will recall, last week Anthropic released a new model called Fable 5, which they classed as Mythos class model, essentially Mythos with some cyber risk safeguards built in. That was launched on the 9th. By the end of last week, that model was gone, pulled by Anthropic in order to comply with an order from the U.S. government, citing national security concerns and placing export restrictions on the model such that only U.S. citizens could have access to it and use it. So to meet those concerns, Anthropic simply chose to remove the model altogether on Friday night. How did we get here? Well, a few days earlier, researchers from Amazon claimed that they were able to circumvent these safeguards, and Amazon CEO took this finding straight to government officials, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and the following day the order came down and the model was pulled. Anthropic, for their part, argued that the bypasses were limited and did not amount to a broad jailbreak, but obviously to no avail. Over the weekend, many security professionals rallied for more transparent AI cyber protections in an open letter published online, and we've seen debates crop up already in both Europe and India when it comes to issues of sovereignty and model dependence or independence. So while it may seem like this is an issue about something that's beyond the normal sphere of influence for middle market or growth stage companies, I'd argue that this is actually a key event that we should be looking at as we are continuing to understand what AI means for us and invest in building systems and processes around it. So I think often there is historically this assumption that software and technology will simply continue to be readily available to us, and the idea that one day it simply wouldn't be isn't even typically discussed in our decision matrix or our vendor diligence questionnaires, or our kind of build, buy, invest decision, particularly if we want to take a dependency on this particular platform, software, capability, etc. But in the case of AI models, what we're seeing is that, in fact, we may be just one day waking up and not having a model available to us for reasons that are beyond our control. And this doesn't even begin to account for possibilities that these companies could go out of business, that their massive amount of infrastructure behind them could fail, or any other number of reasons that might impact availability of the model. So as part of this kind of classic security triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, suddenly we find the third of these three things taking center stage. If you're using models from these frontier AI labs, be it OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, or any of the others, it's probably worth considering what your plans look like in the case that that model is simply no longer available to you. This may be something as simple as swapping out an API key for one that uses another model, and you can continue merrily along your way. But if you've built flows and agents and harnesses and other advanced mechanics that aren't well supported by either other models or older models from the same provider, you may be facing a much more difficult decision in terms of impact. So as you and your firm continue to weigh these investments in AI, I'd encourage you to do a little bit of contingency planning, a little bit of threat modeling around the availability vector. And if you haven't run your tabletop yet for the Q2 or for the first half or for the year, maybe this becomes one of those good scenarios that you can explore with a little more depth with your leadership team. Because it would seem to me like we're going to see more of these types of issues moving forward rather than less. From a fundraising perspective, more than $12 billion in newly committed capital last week, led by Ares Management, who raised $8.5 billion for their latest Pathfinder private credit fund, which historically focuses on what they call complex situations. Certainly plenty of those to go around these days. The SpaceX IPO did end up setting those records we talked about, and as of this morning has grown to raising more than $85.7 billion in net proceeds. We'll see if some of these AI companies can catch those numbers in terms of records as they race to IPO themselves, or if they simply go away overnight or with the stroke of a pen. Both seem equally likely at this point. A reminder that you can find links to all of the articles that we covered in the comments section below, back issues and written transcripts of these videos at intentionalcyber.com, and we will see you next week for another edition of the Intentional Brief.